Hello again, everybody. Lance Smith here, and welcome to episode 248 of the Bible Difficulties and Answers podcast. Today, we begin a two-part Friday series on one of the most dramatic rebellion stories in the entire Old Testament, Korah's rebellion in Numbers 16. And I'll tell you right now, if Hollywood ever wanted to make a Bible disaster movie, this chapter has everything: political rebellion, public accusations, fire from heaven, the ground splitting open. Honestly, it reads like Cecil B. DeMille met a volcano documentary. But buried underneath all the drama is a question Bible critics have raised for years. How exactly did Korah die? Was he swallowed by the earth, or was he burned by fire? Because when you first read the chapter quickly, it can sound a little confusing. One verse says the earth opened up. Another says fire came from the Lord. And skeptics will sometimes say, see, contradiction. But as we'll see today, the text actually makes a very careful distinction. Let's start by reading our focus verses today, Numbers 16, 31 to 35, with a passage from the New Living Translation. And we'll begin with verse 31. He had hardly finished speaking the words when the ground suddenly split open beneath them. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed the men, along with their households and all of their followers who were standing with them and everything they owned. So they went down alive into the grave, along with all their belongings. The earth closed over them, and they all vanished from among the people of Israel. All the people around them fled when they heard their screams. The earth will swallow us too, they cried. Then fire blazed forth from the Lord and burned up the 250 men who were offering incense. Okay, now before we even get into the answer, let me say this. This is one of those passages where slowing down really matters. A lot of Bible contradictions disappear the moment you stop reading the text like you're scrolling through drive-through menu options at Chick-fil-A. The problem is usually not the Bible. The problem is us reading too fast. Norman Geisler and Thomas Howe address this in the Big Book of Bible Difficulties. They point out that some scholars have suggested Korah himself was burned with the 250 men. But they argue the text itself actually separates the judgments into two different events happening to two different groups. And honestly, when you look closely, that explanation makes the most sense. Verses 31 to 34 describe the earth opening and swallowing a specific group: Korah, Dathan, Abiram, their households, their followers, their possessions. The imagery is terrifying. The ground literally becomes their grave. Then verse 35 shifts the scene entirely with this. Then fire blazed forth from the Lord and burned up the 250 men who were offering incense. Now, notice that wording carefully. The 250 men are specifically identified as the men offering incense. That's important because earlier in the chapter, Moses set up two distinct locations and two distinct tests. Korah, Dathan, and Abiram are connected with the tents and the public rebellion against Moses' authority. The 250 leaders are connected with the censers and the priestly challenge before the tabernacle. David Guzik, in his Enduring Word commentary on Numbers 16, does a really good job walking through that distinction. He notes that Moses intentionally separates the groups during the confrontation. The earth judgment targets the rebels gathered at the tents, while the fire judgment targets the 250 men performing the unauthorized incense offering. So this isn't one contradictory story mashed together carelessly. It's actually one coordinated judgment with two separate punishments. And frankly, the chapter reads exactly that way when you stop trying to flatten everything into one single event. It's almost like watching two camera angles in a movie. Now, later passages confirm this interpretation. Numbers 26:10 says the earth opens its mouth and swallowed them with Korah, while fire devoured 250 of their followers. That verse alone practically solves the whole issue. It distinguishes between 1, those swallowed by the earth, and 2, those consumed by fire. Psalm 106:17-18 does the same thing. The earth opened and swallowed Dathan. Fire fell upon their followers. Again, 2 judgments, not one confused account. Professor Rav Rachel Adelman, writing for Hebrew College in her article, When the Earth Opened Her Mouth, points out the vivid imagery of the earth opening her mouth. She connects it to the rebellion itself. Dathan and Abiram had arrogantly refused Moses' call to come up, and so, measure for measure, the earth opens and takes them down. That's powerful imagery. Zachary Garris, in his article, The Faithful Sons of the Rebel Korah, at Knowing Scripture, also highlights something fascinating here. Not all of Korah's family died. Some of his descendants separated themselves from the rebellion and survived. And that's important because later in Israel's history, the sons of Korah actually become associated with temple worship and several psalms. And remarkably, the line of Korah would eventually include the prophet Samuel. Think about that for a moment. One of the greatest prophets in Israel's history came from the family line of one of Israel's greatest rebels. That's a powerful reminder that a terrible spiritual failure in one generation does not have to define the generations that follow. Rachel Alderman, in her article, The Mysterious Literary Life and Death of Korah on thetorah.com, takes the discussion even deeper by examining the literary structure of number 16. She argues the chapter contains several interwoven rebellion traditions brought together onto one unified narrative. And even there, despite the literary complexity, the final form of the text still preserves the distinction between the earth judgment and the fire judgment. Charlie Albright, in his verse-by-verse study, Numbers 16:16-35, Korah Meets His Maker, at superiorword.org, also emphasizes how carefully the chapter separates the sequence of events and the 2 judgments. And GotQuestions.org summarizes the whole thing very clearly with this. God opened the earth to swallow the rebels and separately sent fire to consume the 250 men offering incense. So, when someone asks, was Korah swallowed or burned? The strongest answer is this. The chapter presents 2 simultaneous but distinct judgments. Korah, Dathan, and Abiram are associated with the earth opening. The 250 men offering incense are consumed by fire. And once you see the structure of the passage, the supposed contradiction mostly disappears. Now, next Friday, we're going to continue this Korah discussion with another difficult question. Were all of Korah's family killed, or did some survive? We've hinted at this already. And believe it or not, that question opens up some really fascinating discussions about grace, judgment, and generational faithfulness. So definitely come back for part 2. And if this episode helped you, or maybe helped keep you awake through Numbers without requiring industrial strength coffee, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers@gmail.com. Join the discussion on Facebook. And if you'd like to support the podcast, head over to buymeacoffee.com/Lance Smith. All episodes are archived at BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers.podbean.com. I'm Lance Smith, wishing you good health, good study, and God's richest blessings. So long, everybody.